Today I welcome Miss Aarefa Johari in 10 Minute 10 Thoughts. She is a feminist activist, journalist in Scroll.in, co-founder of Sahio, an organization working to end female genital cutting in Asian communities, alumnus of EFLU Hyderabad, a brilliant woman, rational thinker who thinks beyond the box. Today, Aarefa will talk on gender-based activism. Aarefa, handed over to you.
Thank you so much, Rajeev, for this platform. And thank you for the introduction. I have two careers. I am a journalist and I am also an activist I speak out against a practice that I have personally experienced, which is the practice of female genital cutting. It is more commonly known as female genital mutilation, but we prefer to use the term cutting rather than mutilation. In popular language in India, it would be known as khatna, and khatna is known as something that Muslim and Jewish men undergo as part of their religion. But in some communities, such as my community, which is the Dawoodi Bora community, it is also practiced on girls. So khatna is done on girls. It is called female circumcision, and it is, in short, as you can imagine, and just like all khatna, it is medically unnecessary. It can cause a lot of harm to the body, physically, mentally, emotionally, and sexually. And it is unethical. It is a human rights violation, and it has affected a lot of women and girls, including me. So I don't want to get into the details because you can read more in detail about female genital cutting on my organization's website, which is sahio.com. And the link to the website can be put in the introduction of this video. Um, but in short, this practice needs to stop, and I have personally experienced it at the age of 7, just like many girls in my community. And when I started questioning it as a teenager and in college, but I only publicly started that time. I used to speak out again, at home. I used to question my mother. I used to argue with my mother that why did you take me for this? But it was only in my early 20s when I started working as a journalist. That time, some anonymous member of my community started an online change.org petition to our religious leader, asking him to stop this practice. And that time I realized that a lot of people in the community want to they are not in support of this practice, but they are not able to speak out publicly. And I realized that I want to speak out publicly. I feel very strongly that this practice needs to end. And I don't mind sharing my full name, my identity, as long as I can bring more awareness about this. So I started speaking publicly. And that time I did not realize, but over the years, this happened back in 2011-12. That time I did not think so much about the importance of what I was doing. But gradually over the years, I started because I spoke out. I met through social media and other ways. I met a lot of other like-minded women from my community, even some who were filmmakers from outside the community, but they were focusing on this topic. And for the first time, this topic started getting media attention, national attention. And I was one of the few people who was speaking out publicly, revealing my identity. And I realized that over time, I realized that makes such a huge difference. Just the simple act of breaking the silence and sharing your own personal story about what happened to you and how it affected you. And it's a form of injustice that happened. Just sharing your story can have such a huge impact, because number one, it is a form of catharsis. It helps to whatever feelings you have bottled up inside, you let it out, and when you do that, you start feeling better. And then it breaks isolation, because in any kind of social injustice, especially gender based injustice, women face a lot of different types of oppression, but it is not spoken about in public so much. And so a lot of women and girls suffer in silence, and don't and then they feel that they are the only ones going through it. But when you break the silence, when you start sharing, that's when you realize that there are many other people who are also going through the same thing, and then
Really?
they feel inspired to share their own stories. And then you can connect with them, and you realize that you're not alone, and that is a very empowering and powerful feeling. And it then also inspires other people to share their own stories publicly. And when that happens, and that is what happened in the case of uh, Khatna in my community, that gradually the silence started breaking. More and more women started speaking out against it. And then slowly a movement was created. So I am very proud and lucky to be at the heart of this movement. When I met like-minded women, 5 of us got together and we created a sort of, initially it was an unofficial group and then informal group, and then we sort of organized, and now we have an NGO called Sahiyo. Sahiyo
Okay.
means it's the Bori Gujarati word for Sahelio, which
Acha.
means female friends. And so Sayo aims to basically end this practice of FGC, and we are working with the community to do it. So we create, as I was saying, Sayo is working with the community. We decided we will not file a PIL or go to the court, or do some kind of legal route to bring an end to this practice. But we decided that we would work with the community. We would focus on education, storytelling, breaking the silence, and on engaging with the community members, because ultimately the reason is that practices like Khatna, a lot of
Yes.
people listen to Khatna and they say that this is this is an Islam. Muslims are doing such a terrible practice, and Muslim women are being exploited and subjugated by their community. This feeling comes from a lot of Islamophobia.
Okay.
But one important thing is, this is not a religious practice. It is not even there in the Quran. It
Okay.
is actually a practice that started before Islam. And so it's important to look at this not as some religious practice, but
Okay.
as a cultural practice. There are so many, as a social norm. Social norms are some just practices that have been going on in our cultures for so long, and we just do it because we think we have to do it.
Yes.
But we need to look at the impact on the community, on the women and the girls, and the way in which their lives can be impacted, and uh, and what is ethical and what is right. And that's why we need to change this social norm. And changing any social norm is a very difficult thing to do, because you face resistance from the community, you face backlash from the community. People don't, there are women in our movement, their family members stopped talking to them. Their
Okay.
community told them not to attend the masjid anymore, or made forced them to apologize.
Okay.
They don't let them speak publicly easily. So it makes life very difficult. And that's why it's important that when you speak against a social norm, first you have to understand where it's coming from,
Okay.
and then you need to speak in an informed and effective manner. Informed means you have to have all the information about it to be able to convince somebody else why, whether you look at it from a religious perspective, cultural perspective, human rights perspective, legal perspective, medical perspective, from all these perspectives why this practice is wrong, and you need to be able to you need to be able to empathize with the community and understand that this is not just about one community. Social norms are there in all our communities. Look at, for example, menstrual taboos and how girls across India are made to feel shame about their periods and to not touch things in the kitchen, not do things like they do in normal life just because they're on their periods. That is discrimination that needs to stop, and that's a social norm. Look at the way young people, especially girls, are pressurized into marriage. That is a social norm in our culture. And you know, arranged marriages can be a very exploitative system where there is not enough choice given to young people on who they want to marry, when they want to marry. And that is a social norm that needs to be changed. Look at all the gender norms in our house. Who
Yes.
So basically, this is what I wanted to share, that social norms exist in all of our communities and cultures. They're all connected. And what we need to recognize is how are we discriminating against a particular gender, and what can we do to change it. And the most important thing is break the silence. Start talking about difficult topics, and you will see how things change. Thank
Uh,
you.
Thank you so much, Aarefa.